I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Science Fiction Divide. I'm your host, Larry. Today I'm going to be talking about a movie that is pseudo-science fiction. It falls under many different genres. Comedy, science fiction, science comedy, I guess. Talking about 1990s, and I can't believe this movie is actually 25 years old, Galaxy Quest. A science fiction movie kind of sort of parodying science fiction, particularly Star Trek. Now, admittedly, I am not a uber Star Trek nerd. However, I do know enough about the movie to know or to appreciate the characteristics that this movie has. So the first thing I want to talk about is the characters. Tim Allen as Jason Nesmith as Peter Taggart, Alan Rickman as Sir Alexander Dane as Dr. Lazarus, and my favorite character in this movie that I think a lot of people have referenced to in many different movies, Guy.
Is there air? You don't know!
Fleegman, played by Sam Rockwell, or as people in science fiction refer to them as the Red Shirt. This movie is The Three Amigos in Space. If you've never seen The Three Amigos, that's a movie from the 80s. Highly recommend you check it out. Also a comedy, but it's the same story. It's a fish out of water story about some has-been actors who find themselves in a scenario where all of a sudden it's real. They don't even know it. It's real. It's happening. So we have the big bad guy, the generic green monster. He's big. He's mean. He's got an eye patch. And he's out to destroy the universe, and only our heroes can stop them. This is a story that's been told over and over again. It follows the beats of many classic hero myth stories. And the reason I recommend you watch this movie is, one, because it really does make a lot of fun of science fiction in general. But two, it also shows what it's like to be at a science fiction convention waiting for the hosts to show up. And you get to see the behind the scenes, which from what I understand in a lot of different conventions that I've been to, and I'm sure that you've been to, isn't that far from a stretch, where the actors are kind of delaying things from happening, from getting out there, and turns out that they're having a diva fit in the back. Now, one of the things that I particularly do like in this is that it humanizes actors. Typically, we as a society tend to deify our actors. We tend to find them as larger than life. We find them as more interesting than we are, but they're really just normal people. Having met many different actors from the Star Wars movies, I can tell you, some of them are a lot nicer than others. Some of them are indifferent. Some of them you can tell would rather be anywhere but there. I mean, yeah, I could tell you some stories about Jake Lloyd I'd rather not go into, but there's a video I'm sure a lot of you have seen of him trashing Star Wars.
About 10 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
And do you have no...
Actually, that's not true. Sorry. I just tried to block that memory out.
The thing that I think that's important about this to remember is that our actors are not gods. They're not deities, and their lives aren't really all that much more interesting than ours. In fact, some of them, this movie goes into what it's like to be typecast, especially with Dane as Dr. Lazarus, what it's like to not be able to escape from being that character. There were several books that Leonard Nimoy came out with. The first one was I Am Not Spock, because he was typecasted, let's face it. Leonard Nimoy did other things with his life, but I couldn't tell you what they are, aside from singing that Hobbit song that I'm not going to... Okay, fine, yeah, I'll put it. Okay, that's it. The next book that I know of is I Am Spock, where you kind of... My understanding with this book is that he eventually accepted the fact that this is who he is, this is what he was meant to do, he's not literally saying he's Spock, but he's finally at that point accepted the fact that this is what he's going to be remembered for. I personally will always remember him as Galvatron, but hey, that's just me. It goes in the movie, shows what it's like to not break out of what you're known for, and especially in his case where he feels that it is not something to be proud of. Well, eventually he comes to learn to accept it by the end of the movie. Then you have Jason Nesmith, or Tim Allen's character. There's somebody that tasted fame. He was at the top of his game back when he was the captain of the NSME Protector. And he's continued to live that life. He enjoys the role, he enjoys the character. He's kind of the opposite of Dr. Lazarus. But on some level, you kind of pity him, like, why didn't you move on? Why didn't you do more with your life? I think as normal people, many of us can relate to one or the other. Either not being appreciated for who we really are, or letting ourselves stagnate for something that we were good at. Letting ourselves become the role. How many of us identify ourselves through our work? And to risk change, to do something better with your life, something more with your life, because let's face it, when you're a typecasted actor, sure, it's hard to get work. However, many people become comfortable in those roles too. We as normal people may also face some of these challenges. How many of us are good at our jobs, even if we don't really care much for them, and then we're afraid to find change, to move on to something better? And I think that this movie, though obviously this is not the main theme, highlights this idea of comfortability, stagnation, acceptance, and possibly what it's like to be trapped by your own myth, your own legend, I guess. I don't know how else to describe it. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this. Relatively short. Thank you for your time. Goodbye.